Pesachim Daf test. Today's email comes from Yossi Tesser. He says he can't begin to explain what you're doing. Been following since Pesachim. Just been in the hospital for the past 8 days. Released on Friday night. He knew he was getting better when he was able to start tolerating noises, and he heard the Good morning Rabbi Sai. He felt he was on his way. Refuah Shlema. Kol Kavod, Yossi Tesser, Lakewood, New Jersey. Thank you. Rav says that if a person throws the dam of the Korban Pesach after the meat of the Korban Pesach became tamei, he has a kapara that goes. The Gemara says, according to one shot, it goes according to Rabbi Yeshua, that the achilu is not ma'akev. It's a mitzvah to eat, but it's not ma'akev. By a regular korban, though, since there's no inyan of achila, there's an inyan, but it's not there for the mitzvah. So if the basar is tamei, but the chaylev is tar, or the chaylev is tamei and the basar is tar, you do zrika. Whereas by a nazir, and a person that brings a Korban Pesach, that the achila is important, then if the chaylev becomes tamei, then you can continue to do the zrika. But if the basar becomes tamei, that's when you don't do zrika. And if you did it, then you get a kapara. If a person himself becomes a tmei meis, then you don't do a zrika. And if you do the zrika, it's no good. Why? Because then this person is not in the parsha. He can't begin to eat even if he wanted to, and therefore the korban would be possible if you do zrika. Says the Mishnah, if you have meat of a korban that becomes tamei, and the chaylev, the parts that go on the mizbeach, are tahar, so you do zrika like Rabbi Yeshua. That Rabbi Yeshua says all you need really to do zrika is one kezayis of any type of meat, whether it's the meat that you eat or the meat that the mizbeach consumes. But you cannot combine a half a kezayis of human consumption meat with mizbeach consumption meat. However, by a oila, since the entire animal goes on the mizbeach, so there is no human consumption, so you can take any half a kezayis from the steaks or not from the steaks, it's all one shear. Minchas nesachim, these are the wine, the flour that go together with different karbanis like shlamim and oila, although they're part of the korban, but they don't act as part of the korban to allow the zrika. And that is, if all the meat is tamei and you have the wine left over that's not tamei, that doesn't count towards the tahara of the korban, so that you should be able to make a zrika. You can't make zrika in that case. The Gemara darshans v'hikter achelev l'reach nichayach. We learn from this pasuk that all meat parts are included. In other words, you have the chaylev, the fat, even though it's not, you don't have any meat. But if the chaylev is tar, you can do zrika. The reach nichayach comes to say even the kidneys. However, since it says chaylev, it has to be a meat part and not a nesachim part, not a mincha part. The Mishnah tells us that if the kohanim are tamei, or if the Yisraelim are tamei, or even if the klei sharis are tamei, like the knife of the shechita is tamei, then you do the korban pesach. If you have a roiv of the knife, you don't have any knives, then you do the korban pesach betuma, even though klai Yisrael is tar and the kohanim are tar. Why? Because you don't separate one part that's tamei from the other part. Rav Chizz is of the opinion that tumah tchuya, it's only b'di evet that we push off this tumah, and he says it's only a knife, a metal knife, has the halach of halal cherev, an amazing halacha. Whatever the metal touches, when it comes to humans, if it touches a dead body, it becomes like the dead body. And when you touch that knife, it's as if you touch a dead body, you go down one step from there. That halacha is only said by a dead body. If a metal touches a sheretz, you don't have that halacha. So therefore, says Rava, if you touch that knife that touched the body, then you became tamei, and you eating korban pesach is an isur kares, but not by a sheretz. Rava says even if it became tamei through sheretz, and he brings a hekesh v'abasar sheyiga b'chol tamei, there's a hekesh between the meat that becomes tamei and the person that becomes tamei. So therefore, if the knife became tamei through a sheretz, then a person would eat the korban pesach bituma, even though he's tar, he's part of Klai Yisrael's tar, he still would be able to eat it bituma if the rest of Klai Yisrael are doing it bituma. But if only a minority of Klai Yisrael are doing it, are tamei, then they have to be pushed off to Pesach Sheni. What if you have half and half? Half of Klai Yisrael's tar, half of Klai Yisrael's tamei. The half that's tar, there's no machlokes. Everybody agrees that they bring the korban Pesach on the first Pesach. The half that's tamei, the Gemara brings three shitas. Either the half that's tamei, according to Rav, they bring it on the first Pesach because they're considered, even though they're half, they're considered a majority. A majority brings it on the first Pesach. There's two lashonis in Rav Kahana. First lashon is that Rav Kahana is of the opinion that the half of Klal Yisrael that's tummy is considered a minority. Minority brings it on Pesach Sheni. The second opinion of Rav Kahana is that they're not considered a majority, nor are they considered a minority. They're nishtahin, nishtaher, and therefore they don't bring a Korban Pesach at all, not even on Pesach Sheni. There's a brisa that says all three lashonos. You bring the Korban Pesach. The people that are tamei will bring the Korban Pesach on the first Pesach, on the second Pesach, and not at all. So how do we reconcile this brisa? And the Gemara comes up with a very, very interesting pshat. When it says that the Tmeim bring it on the second Pesach, says the Gemara, it's a case where Klal Yisrael is 50-50, and they're only 50-50 through the women who are added to the group of Tmeim. So you have 50-50, 50% of Klal Yisrael tar, 50% of Klal Yisrael tamei with the women. And he's of the opinion that women do not have to bring a Korban Pesach at all, even in the first Pesach. So you take away the women; they don't count in this case because they're not mechuyev to bring the korban, and therefore the tmeim are the miyut. If the tmeim are the miyut, when do they bring it? The second Pesach. And the brisa that says that tmeim don't bring a Korban Pesach at all, we're going to have to explain one way according to Rav and one way according to Rav Kahana. We're talking about that Klal Yisrael is 50-50, and the women that are added, they make the Tahirim group more than 50%. And we hold that women are chayiv in a Korban Pesach, so they are counted in the group of Tahirim. So therefore, the Tmeim don't do the Korban Pesach on the first Pesach because they are not the majority, they're the minority. But in the second Pesach, they don't do it as well. Why? Because once we remove the women, and why do we remove the women? Because they're not chayiv in Pesach Sheni, they're only chayiv in Pesach Rishon. So it comes out that Klal Yisrael is exactly 50-50. And according to Rav, 50-50, each group is considered a majority, and a majority doesn't bring a Korban Pesach on Pesach Sheni. But according to Rav Kahana, that he holds that 50-50 is not considered a majority, so we have to say that Klal Yisrael is 50-50 with the women. Not that the women push them over the top, but they're exactly 50-50 with the women, and women are mechuyev to bring a Korban Pesach on Pesach Rishon. So the Tmeim don't bring it on Pesach Rishon because they're not the majority, they're exactly 50-50. But on the second Pesach, they don't bring it. Why? Because if you take away the women, the Tmeim become the majority. Because the only way that Tahirim had 50% is with the women. Once you remove the women who are not chayiv in Pesach Sheni, the Tmeim become the majority. Majority doesn't make a Korban Pesach on Pesach Sheni. Have a wonderful day.